Hi, everyone. Welcome today. Today, we're here to discuss a webinar, AI in Financial Crime Compliance, Myths, Realities, and Regulatory Readiness. The webinar is being brought to you today by Transform Finance and sponsored by Silent Eight. With me today, I have a host of distinguished panelists, starting off with Zsombor Brommer, Chief Compliance Officer at United Arab Bank, and Sumit Sarkar, Senior Vice President, Group Head of Sanctions Compliance at Mashreq Bank. And myself, Patrick Kirwin, will be moderating the session. I'm Head of Product Management at Silent Eight. So at Silent Eight, we're a technology company that delivers AI solutions to solve financial crime compliance problems. And we have two seasoned veterans here from the financial crime space that have experience leveraging AI within their programs. So in the audience, you're well in hand. You will get a lot of rounded perspectives on the topic, and hopefully some good insights that you can bring forward back to your own programs. And I did the math, and between us, I think we have almost 60 years of FCC and banking experience between the three of us. So while that makes me feel very old, it puts you in very good hands in terms of the knowledge that hopefully we can all bring to this session today. So welcome, Zsombor, welcome, Sumit. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you for having us.
So just quickly, let's talk about what you would expect to get as an audience member out of this session today. We're going to talk about how to choose an AI solution that is explainable and be sure that it's regulatory ready. We're going to talk a bit about model hallucinations, model drifts, and talk about how these can be addressed through proper governance. And we will go over the concept of AI that supports, and in most cases doesn't replace, human analysts. And most importantly, we're going to highlight some real-life, high-impact AI use cases that are delivering real-world results. So this is what you should expect to get out of the session today. As an audience member, though, we need you to keep us honest. If there's anything that you want to dig into a bit deeper, if there's something we're not covering you'd like to hear more about, please raise questions. You can do so using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. We do have a dedicated session at the end where we'll go about addressing questions, and we've saved plenty of time to make sure we're covering everything that you're curious to know about. So let's imagine that you are, well, most of you are, a financial institution. You're looking to leverage artificial intelligence in your financial crime compliance programs, but maybe you're a bit hesitant. Maybe there's some things that are holding you back, some reservations you have about it. So what we'd like to do today is talk about some of the myths, some of the key challenges that banks and financial institutions perceive about AI that might be holding back their programs. And we'd like to give you all some insights into potentially maybe these aren't real challenges, maybe there are myths, or if they are real challenges, how you could possibly alleviate these issues and find some good success in your programs. So the first myth, I think one that we hear all the time is that AI, the concept of AI as a black box that just can't be explained. And if you can't explain it to your audit teams or your regulators, there's no chance you would want to use it in your program. So before I hand it over to our panelists, I just want to take a step back and look at AI as a broader concept and recognize that AI is a very broad category. We've been hearing a lot about large language models and generative AI recently, but the truth is AI has been around for decades now at this point. And there's an entire spectrum of techniques that are out there that have been tried and true in the marketplace. This graph shows a listing of several different types of AI that have been out there for some time. On a graph, plotting it between predictive power, how accurate the models are at predicting outcomes, and the interpretability of those models. And you can see there's almost a linear relationship between how predictive these models are and their explainability. So for example, starting on the far left, you had your deep learning models. These are neural networks, for example. I would put large language models in this category, who do an excellent job of getting very accurate predictions, but they're closer to the spectrum of lower interpretability. These are the closest things you can get to that black box myth that we talked about. But on the far right, you have decision trees, linear regression, rules-based learning. There are other types of models, AI models, that are getting good outcomes, but not as comparatively high in terms of predictive power, but very good model explainability. So I just wanted to highlight this is a spectrum. There are opportunities anywhere on this spectrum to pick a solution that gives you good outcomes, that are giving you benefits, but are also aligning to your expectations around and risk tolerance around interpretability. And there are techniques now out there, for example, explainable AI or XAI, that are looking to move all of these to the right. And for example, at Silent Eight, we use something called neurosymbolic AI, which allows us to take the benefits of the deep learning and the more complex models, wrap those up in a rules framework so that our customers can get explainability and predictability that they expect. So from a technical perspective, not exactly a myth. Some models are more of a black box than others, but just letting you know that there is, there are techniques to allow models to be explained. But going back to a business perspective, I'd like to hear from all of you, starting with the Zsombor, maybe as a compliance executive, what are your expectations of transparency in an AI solution? What would you like to see when it comes to transparency?
Thank you, Patrick, and I welcome everyone in the call, and it's good to be among this many friends and colleagues and discussing this very important topic these days. Because, as you rightly said, it shouldn't be a black box; it's more like a glass box. The whole AI, and nowadays we are being pushed by the business, by the board, by the management, even by the customers to say something, to start utilizing AI models. But we can only start, and I think it was brilliant to start with explaining what we are talking about really here, is to understand the technology, understand the capabilities of the technologies, and also understand our own limitations. So me as a compliance executive, as you said, we worked out in our bank a kind of a principle which is called dogma. Dogma stands for transparency instead of data transparency as D, O as operational transparency, G as governance, M as model, and A as accountability. So I need my team and myself to be able to answer to all of these questions related to the data transparency, related to the operational transparency of the solutions, the model transparency as you described before, the underlying governance, and not to mention the accountability for that one. And most of the time, accountability comes with the joint accountability of the entity, i.e., us, and with the service provider like Silent Eight or similar companies with whom we build the capabilities within the compliance team together. I'm handing over to Sumit to continue.
Thanks, Zsombor, and hello to everyone on the call. I think, Zsombor, you've kind of covered it all quite well. I think the model that you talked about actually works quite well in our sphere of work. Just maybe add a couple of points to kind of make the point a bit more deeper in terms of what we specifically look out for from a transparency point of view. So one of the things I personally check out is a clear decision rationale. Essentially, the AI or the AI model should be human understandable, and the explanations should be clear for high-stake decisions like risk scoring, sanction screening, or monitoring of transactions. The other point I'm quite interested in from a transparency point of view, and I quite put it as a top-notch requirement, is the audit trail and traceability. So whatever decisions the AI tool or the model is taking, it should be fully traceable and should be able to be traced under logs, metadata for retrospective analysis, audits, regulatory engagement, and further on. This kind of makes the solution far more user-friendly, far more solid, and also from a regulatory engagement point of view, makes it more transparent from a user point as well as from an external point of view. So these 2 points just to kind of add on to what we look out for when we talk about explainability or transparency of the model.
Sumit, I love what you said about being human readable, because explainability can't just stop at your data science team, right? If your data scientists understand it, great. But if you can't explain it to your regulators, then that doesn't help you really much. And I think it's also important, as you said, human readable. Even your analysts, the people who are looking at the outcomes, they should be able to understand why the decisions have been made. So I think that end-to-end explainability is really important. And I think we can't end any conversation about explainability without talking about model risk management. So I mentioned earlier, our stakeholders are our regulators, our audit teams, our senior management, but we increasingly have model risk management functions within the organizations that are, looking at these models and making sure that they are robust and explainable. And I just wanted to bring up, there was recently some really good guidance from the Wolfsburg group around transaction monitoring, where they specifically call it MRM, and they specifically say to consider the financial crime risk as part of your MRM review. So I think they're considering there may be a trade-off between model risk and financial crime risk. So maybe I'm willing to accept some model risk if it's going to give me a big boost in terms of the financial crime risk that I'm going to mitigate. So I wouldn't want to leave this topic without just addressing model risk management. So that's a good segue into myth number 2. Something else that I think is really a big concern when it comes to organizations looking to build their AI programs, but they have some reservations that, well, if my regulators won't accept it, then it's something that I'm not going to be able to implement in production. So, Sumit, starting off with you here, what trends are you observing both regionally and globally with regards to regulatory acceptance of AI solutions and compliance? What are you seeing on the ground?
Thanks, Patrick. So at a high level, I think such has been the talk of the town from an Gen AI standpoint, that if you speak to any regulator, this kind of comes up within the first couple of minutes of the discussion as to what is your institution doing in terms of your Gen AI space, and how are you adopting from an organization point of view. Whilst this was more prevalent on the business credit side, but now, as you rightly said, after the evolution of the MRA models, and especially the FATF and the Wolfsburg guidance, this has really gained much more strength and boost in terms of as a accepted way or an accepted model within the FCC models that we do. In terms of the practices from a regulatory adoption standpoint that I look out for, or we should be looking out for, I think one of the key aspects is to proactively engage with the regulator at an early stage. That kind of helps to build the engagement and also build the expectations, and also kind of set out what the organization is planning to do at a longer term, so that there are no surprises towards the latter part of the engagement. So I really do always emphasize on the point on engagement with the regulators at an early point. Also, I believe there's a strong need to have to conduct a comprehensive risk assessment internally to understand which spaces, where, and how would you like to use the AI solutions, because it's not just about using an AI solution or an AI model. It's also about understanding how does it help you manage your process, your risk, your business. Otherwise, you end up taking a black box, which you don't really understand how it meets the purpose. So I think that purpose-driven comprehensive risk assessment is quite critical to understand what the organization or the function needs and how it can be used. And the last one I want to talk about a bit more slightly in detail is data governance and the strength of data that kind of boosts and runs all of these models. Majority of the models that we talk about, majority of the solutions that we use, there's a very strong focus around accuracy, integrity, and flow of data. So I think in terms of an AI adoption or a solution, the implementation of a strong data governance framework structure is highly critical, which encompasses data privacy, security, lineage, and usage, and more importantly, how the handling practices are from a regulatory confidence and customer trust all as well. I'll just pass it on to Zsombor to add a few other points on this one.
Thank you. I think Patrick mentioned you well that we altogether have like 60 years of experience. So that means that I just a few months to explain further because you already covered well the topic. But let me just add a couple of points here. I think it's very important. Similarly, what was happening previously with the cloud adoption, it's like a journey for most of us learning these things. And by now, most of the jurisdictions, even here in the UAE, we have very clear regulatory guidelines in terms of how we can adopt to the cloud again, just using as an example, or previously using third-party solutions within the bank. So I expect this to be evolved accordingly. But please make sure what Sumit just mentioned, just to add a couple of things. The commitment to continuously monitor the behaviors of your models and their performance, the continuous engagement in terms of checking the models, and really consider it as a digital workers for you, or as a digital partner of you, and treat it like that. So yes, it can be helpful, but it has its own challenges and even opportunities. Not to mention, sometimes what I see is that there are some interoperability kind of issues with the other systems that you might have, or with the other processes that you might have. So make sure that you consider it when you integrate it into your processes. There are no cracks. That there is a flawless kind of approach with the adoption and with the use as well.
Zsombor, I like what you said about this being a journey and comparing it to the journey of cloud adoption. And it can also be a journey of education as well for your regulators. So I think that not all of our regulators globally, we have a global audience here, are as mature in their understanding of AI as others, right? So you have some jurisdictions who have been giving some written guidance. There's the EU AI Act recently, in Singapore has MAS has done some other guidance that's out there. So I think it is a journey of education, educating the regulators. They will have questions. They want to understand more about this. So it's taking them on that journey. And as they become more familiar, they'll be more willing to, hopefully accept some of these solutions. But I think what I'm hearing from both of you is that generally the regulatory environment is warming to it, so long as you can provide them the confidence, as you said, all the monitoring routines are in place, that you've thought this through from why are you doing this? And what's the goals that you're willing to accomplish? So thank you for those answers. So let's go to another topic, another myth, I would say, that is gives some folks out there some pause, and it's around bias and hallucinations. And I think what it really comes down to is trust. How can you trust these models to make accurate decisions? Especially we're in a very highly regulated environment, an environment that is there's serious consequences for even missing one, for example, sanctioned risk nexus, right? So how can we feel confident in these machines, taking these kind of important decisions for us on our behalf? Zsombor, I'll start with you. What are, I talk about here hallucinations, but there's other things, right? So what are the typical risks associated with the use of AI models that banks should be aware of before they start bringing them into their programs?
Yeah, I think it's a very valid question, and this is why I think collaboration with the third parties, most of the time with whom we work with, is very important, and understand how and where the model was trained and on what data the model was trained on, so you can understand that the potential implications on your businesses. Like, for example, if you are a GCC-based bank, but the model was created and trained on another jurisdiction or another geography, there may be some inbuilt biases towards like, for example, sanctions towards to certain nationals, to certain names, for example. So you need to understand, and this is why I think early detection and early collaboration and well-inbuilt collaboration between human and machine is very important, so we can figure it out and we can train it accordingly. By the time you can adjust the models and eliminate or reduce these kind of hallucinations or mistakes or bugs or whatever we call it in the system, and make it more accurate according to your target market, to your portfolio, to your jurisdictions and regulatory expectations.
Thank you. Sumit, over to you. Any other risks that you see that banks should be taken care of, or any other thoughts on this topic?
So I think given in some of these models or some of these solutions are really handling large quantity or large value of data, and sometimes these data can be cross jurisdictions, cross continents, cross countries. So at times we also look at data privacy and security risks coming out of handling such large data set of unique data sets of customers or non-customers as well. So I think that's another slightly not directly linked to bias or hallucination, but an equally relevant from a risk standpoint is to have the data privacy, security risks, and breaches, if any, for example, unauthorized accesses or misuse of data is another area of risk or focus that we tend to also sometimes overlook because that is quite critical so far as confidentiality and privacy concerns. I think that's the one I wanted to add in terms of from a risk standpoint. We also have the model drift and governance failures, but I think those are something that we can talk about later on in the webinar.
Yeah, sure. Zsombor, I like also what you said. You talked about this human in the loop being very important as well. So you don't want your model learning things from bad behavior. So it's important to have some humans in the loop. So I would recommend having eyes on every time your model is retrained or learns new behaviors, having those being reviewed before they go into production so that you're not perpetuating this bias. So you have some stop gaps in between to understand the decision that it's making, make sure that's aligned with your risk tolerance, with your policies and procedures before you go forward and start letting it make decisions at scale that you might not be very comfortable with. So thank you for that. Okay, this is another big topic that we hear a lot about in this space. I'm a compliance professional. My organization is looking to bring in AI to make things better, but I see it as this is something that's going to replace me, right, in the future. First of all, is this a myth? Sumit, I'll start with you. Do you think that we really are going to AI is going to work out of our jobs and we will have nothing else to do? It'll be done by machines entirely.
Yeah, I think this possibly is the cream of the discussion. This has been a topic of discussion for quite a few years, not only linked to just AI, but I think when we had robotics introduced, machine learning introduced, we had similar kind of threats, similar kind of concerns raised around technology replacing human beings. But we three of us still have a job, doing pretty well so far. So I think we are in kind of safe hands that way. But I think to kind of address the main question, I don't think AI is anyway going to replace human compliance functions or professionals. I see more this as a complementary function where it complements our efforts in managing financial crime risk or compliance risk. So I do not see really AI as a threat to place, but it's AI more as a complement to help us do things better and rationally and kind of also dedicate our resources in the right space. The way I talk about it is if AI can start doing some of the repetitive tasks and some low risk tasks, for example, we don't need to spend 90% of the time in discounting false positives. If that is what the screening solution or the monitoring solution can do, we can then use the time of our resources and our teams to look at more complex investigations for high risk areas which deserve more time, more engagement, and more space to be looked at. So that's how I kind of look at AI as a complement, AI as a partner, rather than as a tool or as a problem or a concern that it might start replacing human professionals. Also, I think you cannot take away accountability from us as individuals running departments or doing the job. I mean, the AI tool is going to perform the responsibility part of the job, depending upon how much of the space we are giving up to the tool or the solution. But at the end of the day, you don't expect central banks and regulators to take the accountability part away from the individuals who are running and are responsible and accountable for running the departments and functions. Also, I think in most of the solutions that we have seen so far, I think we tend to look at used cases or data, which is more of a backward-looking approach. As we go on a financial crime landscape, we have such evolving threats continuously changing every day, that for a model to start looking at the emerging threats and adapt itself continuously, it's quite challenging unless that model is so sophisticated that it can adapt to the changing landscape of financial crime on an everyday basis. So I think what might happen is our role or our responsibilities get more tweaked, get more
Mm.
changed, and more focused and nuanced rather than what repetitive nature of tasks that we do. But I do not really see a situation where AI will start replacing human professionals, but more as a friend or a partner in this journey.
Sumit, what you said is interesting. You talked about using this as a to augment and take away some of the repetitive tasks and take away some of the obvious noise from the system. And in a way, that's actually allowing the analysts today to focus on more rewarding work, right? Focus on the higher risk activities. I think in some ways it would be more fulfilling to work on complex cases rather than doing the same repetitive task over and over and over. So in a way that this could actually be some benefit in terms of job satisfaction. But I also like what you said about not removing accountability. Ultimately, the decision sits with humans within the organization and not entirely machines. Zsombor, do you have anything else you wanted to add to this discussion?
Maybe I'm just slightly bit of, just a bit more skeptical on the compared to Sumit. So I think, yeah, definitely some jobs will disappear, and we need to adapt. So I think adaptability of humans, adaptability specifically on the compliance space, needs to change. I mean, when I started my career, and again mentioning the 60 years of experience, it was quite some time ago. We started analyzing reports on an Excel basis. Now we use sophisticated tools and applications and whatnot. So we need to continuously learn and adapt to the new developments, understanding the language. And we already emphasize the importance of talking the same language with our data scientists, with our regulators, so using the same dictionary and whatnot. So this is very important. So we need to accept that maybe some of the roles, some of the more junior roles or the most junior roles in our organization will be replaced eventually by a machine. But more sophistication, more sophisticated jobs will remain in the human hands and brains and fingers. So I believe this will change, and we will adopt to these things. So we'll see how it goes. When I started my banking career, everybody was talking about SDP journeys and whatnot, and SDP will diminish operations and whatnot. Still, we have large operational teams in the bank. So I'm not worried about the future of compliance professionals, but we need to accept that, we need to adopt to these developments and changes and continuously learn.
That's a great point, and maybe I'll put it back to both of you. In this future where compliance professionals will need to coexist with AI solutions and more advanced technology, what are some of the skills that a compliance professional in the future will need to develop to be successful in this type of environment? Any suggestions to any of the colleagues or attendees here that want to know how they can upskill themselves and to survive in the future?
If I may start and then hand over to Sumit. So I think, again, the language of technology, whether we like it or not, this is something that we need to learn to speak. The other one is the use of the technology, and I think previously there were CVs that I received saying that I'm fluent in Microsoft Words and Excel and PowerPoint. Good luck. I think you need to accept that we are talking about the ChatGPT or the other models, and this is just basic. So we need to emphasize that it's no longer just the subject matter expertise in sanctions and ABC or AML. It needs to come with the language of technology and whatnot. So that's definitely something which needs to happen, and not to mention the flexibility. Accept that there are changes, accept that there are continuously changes, maybe even within the same calendar year, maybe even the same day. You need to accept those changes. So I think that's that's where I see the challenge sometimes in compliance, because we are sometimes we tend to be too focused on the regulations and whatnot. We need to accept and embrace the change.
Fantastic. Sumit, anything
Thanks,
you want to add?
Zsombor. I think Zsombor hit the right point. So I think whilst we talk so much about technical aspects of AI and machine learning and other tools, I think we sometimes tend to overlook the soft skills part of the compliance officer and how they evolve over a period of time. So if there was ever a time and the importance of continuous learning and adaptability, it is now. Because if you have to survive this journey, if you have to really be part of this journey, it's very, very important to have the culture of staying current with technology, with frameworks and emerging risks, and continue to adapt to them and adopt them on a continuous basis. I think that's a key skill of a compliance officer of the future that will help them to grow and grow further as to from a learning and development standpoint. More on the technical side, yes, I mean, we might not need fluency in AI tools or AI models, but at least understanding of all the frameworks, models, limitations, strengths of the systems, and how they work. I think that knowledge and understanding is quite critical, because once we start being a user, we've got to understand why and how we are using it for. Besides that, I think the other bit, which is for a future ready, is compliance software professional. I do think the advanced analytical skills are quite important. We are looking in increasingly situations of complex data sets, large data sets, so ability to understand and use these AI tools, but also have to understand that how do we use these data sets for, and how do we not use these advanced skills for. So I think from a regulatory alignment perspective, I think advanced analytical skills of a future skilled professional is quite critical in my view.
And I like what you said, understanding how a basic understanding of how these models work is important, because that allows you to be skeptical of the outcomes, right? If you understand the limitations of something like, for example, ChatGPT, you're able to be more skeptical about the outcomes and know what, have a keener eye to know where there might be some errors coming out of it, or things you should question more deeply. So I think that's very important. Before we move on to the next myth, I want to back up a bit. We have an audience question here. Sumit, you mentioned, rightfully so, because these models are bringing in more and more data, a risk that banks should be concerned about potentially here is data privacy. So we have a question here that came out saying, how do you address concerns related to data privacy and security when deploying AI technologies in compliance processes? And this is a hard topic, is a topic you have a whole webinar on itself, but any immediate pointers to either from either yourself or Zsombor on how to address data privacy concerns?
Maybe, I mean, of course, you need to understand your local regulations, regulatory expectations related to such things. You need to, as Sumit mentioned, some of these models and some of the solutions maybe expose you to other jurisdictions' regulations too, whether it's because of cross-border or because of where the data sits and how the data is moving across. So you need to understand all these complexities. I think you need to understand, as I mentioned, in terms of data transparency and others, the model management and everything. So there are, as you mentioned, Patrick, it's rather complex, but these are definitely worth considering points that I just mentioned now.
I think the only part I'll add, so thanks so much. The only point I'll add is also to get a deep insight and understanding of what the requirements are in the respective jurisdiction, and understand those limitations as to what those limitations are and what's the boundary within which we've got to operate. Because sometimes that boundary can be quite thin, sometimes the boundary can be quite broad. So, in what are the kind of landmarks or the potential loopholes as to where we can get caught out. So I think privacy in itself is such a large topic that we can debate over it for the whole next hour. I think it's the regulatory mandate to understand what the need is and how do we fit in the model into that regulatory mandate.
Great, thank you both. So moving on to myth number 5 here, AI is all hype, and doesn't deliver actual results. Now, it's undeniable that there is an AI hype machine happening right now. So it's what everyone's talking about, but does it actually deliver real results? So I wanted to ask each of you to give us some insights on this. Are there any particular AI projects you're working with, either within your institutions or ones you're aware of, that are giving, real driving real value for you or your organizations? If you have anything that you'd like to share, give us some examples of what you're working on and what kind of value you're seeing in this. Zsombor, maybe I'll start with you.
Yeah, while the topic is very much FCC focused today, but let me bring in some couple of other points where we can actually use. I mean, I leave it with Sumit to explain maybe some of his models and his projects. But definitely in the space of FCC financial crime compliance, it's proven in sanction screening, name screening, and all these matters. Even sometimes, the basics of monitoring capabilities with the support of the AI, disposing the initial alerts are proven. What I'm currently focusing on is using AI in terms of understanding other aspects of compliance. For example, analyzing text, large and complex text, and give us the summary of things. And these are AI capabilities which are already embedded in some of the solutions already deployed and implemented on your PCs maybe. So it's not rocket science anymore. Or even understanding the complexities of different regimes where you can leverage AI, for example, when it comes to, for example, sanctions, which regulations to look at, for example, the EU, the US, and the other nexuses. So these are all proven use cases and readily available for consumption.
Thank you. Sumit, anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, so maybe I'll just briefly walk through a particular project we are working on in the organization, which is proving to be quite helpful. So in the financial crime compliance space, we're developing a platform using at least a couple of AI tools to help us improve our financial crime risk management capabilities and the program. Essentially, if you see in a large number of organizations, particularly the large organizations, we do have AML and sanctions as two departments: investigation, monitoring, alert management, risk management. And a lot of times things fall in the cracks as to how we manage risks more holistically as financial crime. So what we're trying to achieve by using some of the more nuanced tools is to how do we kind of bring all these risk management functions together and look at client financial crime risks much more holistically. So what are the common themes that we are observing within the customer space as to what is burning? So what we're trying to achieve is harness some of the AI tools to connect the screening, the monitoring spaces together, and then look at what is the financial crime that we are looking at from a client standpoint, and also automating a lot of these steps that are repetitive in nature. For example, when you start doing an alert investigation from a monitoring standpoint, you will look at their KYC profiles, their top buyers, top suppliers, geographies, jurisdictions, client risks, KYC files. All of this information can be packaged in such a way and given to an investigator to say, this is the inherent risk we are seeing from an AML standpoint, from a sanctions standpoint, and from an onboarding standpoint. Here is the piece that is ready for the investigator to start making decisions based on the analysis. That's our use case that we are using quite well, and it's helping us to, from benefits point of view, I think it's helping our investigators improve the quality of information that's being supplied to them from an investigation point of view. Number two, we have got pretty stringent timelines in UAE in terms of completing an investigation and filing a SAR to the regulatory authorities. If it deems a SAR, those are quite as low as 30-35 days. We don't have those 90 days anymore to file a SAR in UAE at all. Makes it quite challenging to complete the investigation in such a timeline. So that's something that's been quite promising, to kind of work on this investigation space using some smart AI tools, both from a monitoring point of view, as well as from a screening point of view, and also helps them bridge the gap together when we look at financial crime risks more holistically. And if I may just use a couple of minutes more, we're also using AI obviously in the screening space. I think we're not the only one. A lot of banks are using AI in the screening space, particularly where you have got low-hanging fruits around repetitive nature, false positives, looking at alert data, quality of data, where the data really points toward a false positive. Do we really need a human being to go in and make a decision, rather than can a more comprehensive solution be made out of the data sets that we already have fed into the systems and are coming in from the external watchlist solutions as well. It's a couple of exciting projects we're working on, and we're helping kind of bridge those financial crime risks collectively together.
Yeah, I would agree. I think if you're new to this, if you're just starting on your journey with AI, I think screening is a good place to start, because these are very binary decisions that you're making, and there's good area for real benefits, as you said, low-hanging fruits, to start there. In fact, I think you inadvertently answered one of the questions that came from our audience. They say AI adoption appears easy in the payment screening, customer screening space. Okay. What aspects do you think AI could support with high-risk KYC, periodic reviews, EDD, et cetera? And I think you touched on that as well, right? So it's not just beyond screening, but you're also using AI to go into all those areas of periodic reviews, KYC, collecting those records, and sharing the intelligence across all of those. So I think that's that's a good answer to that question there. But we do have another one I think is very interesting for both of you. I'll bring it up. When it comes to hype and delivering results, the question is, how can banks ensure that the ROI of AI in financial crime compliance goes beyond cost savings and truly improves customer experience? So I guess that's a question back to both of you, is when we talk about delivering results, are you looking at ROI as the primary driver, or is there anything else that AI can also do to improve the overall benefit to your organizations?
I think, Patrick, one of the points to be very clear about is that when you start adopting these tools, these solutions, you still have the purpose driven, that what am I going to use it for? If my purpose is not clear, then my objective, then I don't really have a sound objective as to what I'm trying to do. So ROI, yes, it is critical from an ROI financials point of view, but it's when we start looking at solutions, we are more looking towards a solution that delivers results towards better customer experience, quicker results, improving the quality of the work that we give our employees to do. It's not just about externally focused, but also internally focused. Where an alert investigator was looking at false positives, he can start using his time to do more investigations in high-risk spaces, high-risk customer reviews that way. So there are multilateral avenues through which we can look at the benefits that AI tools are giving. But again, has to be aligned to the organizational goals, as well as to what the organization's risk appetite is, how the organization is set up, and what it wants to do, what it wants to achieve through these AI tools. But ultimately, I think as a bank, we are here with the customer at the center point. So the idea is to make the customer experience and the employee experience better, faster, smoother, and as seamless as possible.
Thank you. Zsombor, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think Sumit covered it well and comprehensively. What I'm saying, just we have a number of customers, and I always say treat compliance as, if you are part of the compliance, treat it as your own business. So we have customers from the regulators, we have customers from the customers, we have customers from the business, even from internal audit. So, these solutions can help to address all of their needs and expectations, process transactions faster, being more compliant or just compliant with the regulations, but also, as we mentioned, probably manage the cost and expenses related to compliance eventually.
And I think very often there's a convergence of these things, right? If I can clear more payments instantly without having to do an extensive review, that both saves me cost in terms of human time spent on this, but also it improves, as you said, faster payments, and it gives a better customer experience. So in a lot of ways, these benefits converge together, which is quite nice. Okay, so let's look at our last myth here, myth number 6. The myth is AI is a silver bullet that will solve all of our compliance problems. I'm sorry to tell you, as a purveyor of AI solutions, unfortunately, this is not this is a myth. In fact, I don't think anyone here would say that AI will magically solve all your problems. But maybe what I can do is flip it around to the panelists here. What are some common mistakes banks make when they're embarking on an AI journey for the first time? So if anyone here in the audience is looking to go down this path, maybe they think it's a silver bullet and it's going to fix all their problems. What are some kind of common mistakes you might see if you're just starting out on this journey? Zsombor, maybe we'll start with you.
I think underestimation time, for example, adoption takes time, and definitely, and it's not just in terms of time, but also resource wise and everything, and the upskilling of ourselves is takes some time. So the earlier you start your learning journey, the better, and just to give time and understand the complexity of the implementation associated with the solution. Definitely not a silver bullet, in my opinion. But if you adopt it well, then this will definitely solve some of your problems. Not all. When it comes to
anything you would say? Oh yeah, sorry. Anything you would say is a common trap that banks might fall into when adopting this AI for the first time, or any tips you would give to someone who's looking to start this journey?
I think I will kind of talk about at least 3 very common pitfalls I have seen in terms of adoption of AI and AI tools. And I think the one that I'm really passionate about is underestimating the data challenges. Significant amount of the solutions that are driven by these solutions are dependent on data quality, data lineage, and data integrity. And if banks or institutions are not having structured, clean data, your models will most likely fail and not deliver the results they are intended to be implemented for. So I think underestimating data challenge is a common pitfall I have observed in few spaces. Number 2, I have also seen that there is sometimes a lack of clear user case definition. You might adopt a solution without actually knowing what am I going to use it for and how am I going to use it for, rather just having a tool in place and just adopting it. So I think if somebody is trying to adopt it on a smaller scale, start with the small use case scenarios like transaction monitoring, prioritization of alerts in transaction monitoring, like a tool that can help you prioritize your alerts, or sanctions screening, or some adverse media or PEP screening, which are far more which can be easily controlled, risk managed, and can be pretty well data controlled as well. So these 2 are kind of the top 2 pitfalls. The third one, I think, is something that I do like is the over reliance on vendors without developing the internal expertise. If you fall into that trap, it's a trap very difficult to get out of. And in terms of regulatory engagement and in terms of explaining those models to a regulator, it becomes seriously challenging because it's something you have not understood well. How would you explain that to somebody else or a third party like a regulator? So I think over reliance on vendors at times results in poor integration, can sometimes also result in loss of control, and also helps you to, and also can lead you to start mitigating risks which are not really apparent, and can help you, or rather lead you to an issue where you're adapting or making changes without really knowing what changes you're making them for. So I think it's the fine balance between reliance on vendors and internal expertise, which everyone has to play quite deliberately and in a very tactical way.
Something you said there, the second point you mentioned was making sure you understand your problem before you go and find a solution to that problem, and make sure that AI is actually the right answer to that problem. And I think that's actually a common theme that both yourself and Zsombor have mentioned throughout this entire webinar, is that keeps coming back to make sure you understand your problem statement, make sure you find a solution that is relevant to answering that problem statement. I think that's a theme we keep hearing over and over again. So thank you. So we're coming towards the end of the webinar, but I want to make sure we get answers to a lot of the questions that our audience has been putting forward. So I think so please do continue to drop your questions into the Q&A session. We'll try to answer as many of them as we can before we close off today. I think there's, even though we've talked about, some of these myths and debunk them as best we can, there's still some doubters in the audience. So let me read a few questions here. Can they go back to the, I think both explainability and the trust questions. First, we have, can AI make compliance truly real-time and preventative? So I guess is a focus on real time here. And how comfortable would you be using AI to make a decision on, for example, sanction screening? So how confident would you be in allowing an AI solution to make a decision on something such as important as, let's say, sanction screening outcomes? Any thoughts on these questions?
If I may go first
please go ahead, yeah.
with the last question, if I may. So, I mean, this is a learning curve for the institution, for the bank, and even within your team, to understand what decisions or decision powers, if any, we provide to the AI tool. As I mentioned, consider the AI as your colleague. So, would you want? Do you trust the new colleague, the new journers, to make any calls, like, for example, filing a SAR or anything to the regulator? Maybe not. So you want to control it. You want to understand how it behaves and whatnot. So obviously, if this is proven within your own organization, because whatever you receive from your trusted partners, your third-party vendors, or whatnot, as Sumit mentioned, it's very important to have the capabilities even inside of the bank. So I would emphasize that yes, eventually certain tasks can be fully done and managed by AI, but I would be cautious and do like a step-by-step kind of an approach within my own organization.
Sumit, anything you want to add?
I think it all again boils down to, and if we kind of round it off, again goes back to accountability. The AI or the AI tool is not a solution that's come off of the rack. So that is something we have consciously deliberated and moved on. So if we have adopted a tool that's going to make our lives or jobs easier, there is an accountability factor to make sure that it's working correctly as desired and being monitored on a continuous basis. So whilst no solution in the world is foolproof or can ever say nothing can ever go wrong, to make sure that nothing goes wrong, there has to be that evolution of assurance, review, audit, testing, audit trail management to make sure that your solution is working as you have desired. So I think it's all about accountability and ensuring that you are walking the talk around the accountability factor as well.
I think something that both of you said was, I heard, you wouldn't trust maybe your brand new analyst without oversight. And Sumit, you talked about, having this governance and continual monitoring the outcomes. The good news is a lot of times, if you treat an AI solution the same way you would a human solution, you already have frameworks in place to do quality assurance on human outcomes and do, we even know our human analysts make mistakes. So we have frameworks in place to manage those and make sure those are being done correctly. And you can apply some of those same frameworks to your AI solution as well. But I think that the key, as you both highlighted, is having controls in place, continuous monitoring, and get comfortable with the solution is acting as you would expect before you let it expand its domain. We have another question here specific to how will AI-driven compliance aligning with both local and international regulatory requirements. So again, it's going back to our question on regulatory acceptance, I guess. But how do you ensure that an AI-driven compliance tools align with both local and international regulatory requirements?
This is rather a broad question to me, to be honest, because first you need to understand what regulations you are subject to. And so understand your licenses and associated regulations first and foremost. And of course, in the modern world, or in today's world, all of us are part of the global ecosystem, either this way or the other. So I think it's definitely worth understanding when it comes to, for example, the sanctions space. Like you need to understand that, okay, what's the currency, what are the customers involved in certain transactions, and you need to assess the sanctions regimes accordingly. But not all the sanctions will apply for all the transactions necessarily. So understand those kind of responsibilities and accountabilities associated with that one. And as you mentioned, maybe Patrick earlier, associated regulatory papers will assist you to guide through the global expectations and including the local expectations of the regulators. Because as you mentioned, some adopt and create these kind of environments better than others, or sooner or earlier than others. So it's definitely worth watching what's happening globally, and so you understand what's coming next to your plate.
Thank you. I want to make sure I save enough time for final takeaways from everyone. We just have a few minutes left, so I'll go just with one more question from the audience. With your extensive experience in sanctions compliance, how do you see AI transforming the landscape of sanctions screening and compliance in the MENA region? So this is, again, a very broad question, but I think it speaks to, if you were to look forward in the future, do you see AI as something that's transforming the landscape? And if so, how do you see things changing down the road? Sumit, maybe you can give us an answer here.
Yeah, definitely. I think I do see this is a game changer, not only just in MENA, but across the world from a solutioning standpoint, particularly in the world of global sanctions. Given the use cases we have seen so far, given the robustness of the solutions that we have seen, I think it might not transform the whole landscape, but it'll certainly give many institutions, many banks, avenues to look at things with a different pair of lens, to do things much more faster, much more seamlessly, much more accurately. Plus, most importantly, help manage risk management in much more efficient way. Because here we are all in the business of efficient and effective risk management. That's what we stand out for every day. That's our bread and butter every day. We are here to protect the banks and the institutions we work out for. So yes, I do see potential for landscape changes across MENA and other markets, but obviously most of these solutions are not off-the-shelf cheap solutions. So I think it's also important to understand how do these fit into the organization appetite, financials, as well as from an ethos point of view. But yes, the answer is yes. I think we are seeing large-scale changes happening in MENA so far as adoption of these tools are concerned.
Fantastic. So I know I haven't left you much time, but I want to give you both the last word here. Any last key takeaways, if you would say maybe one or two, that if you want the audience to go back to their jobs and take one piece of knowledge back, what would you suggest you'd like them to take away from this session? Maybe Zsombor, start with you.
Yeah, I think we covered almost all the myths and not the myths only, and the key takeaways from us. So what I could just say is that not only AI needs to adopt, but we need to adopt to AI as well.
Nice one. Sumit, anything you'd like to leave us with as we close off the session today?
I think I kind of use a tagline that AI is not a complement. AI is a complement and is not a replacement. It's here to help and make our journey easier and be an enabler of solutions.
Fantastic. Well, I'd like to thank both of you for taking the time to give us these great insights today. Really great answers and a lot of knowledge that I think this audience can take away. I'd like to thank the audience as well for the great questions and the engagement. I hope you learned a lot from the session and can take this back to your jobs, and we're all in the same game together. We all have the same goals in mind in terms of limiting financial crime in the financial sector. So thank you for your participation, and I hope you learned a lot today.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.